Every week, the Military Sealift Command highlights several of their ships, one or two, or some more sometimes, each week. And this week's ship in the spotlight are two vessels, the motor tanker Maersk Perry and the SLNC Goodwill. SLNC is Schuyler Lines Navigation Company. These are two commercial tankers that are chartered by the Navy's Military Sealift Command. I got a video dropping on Friday that's going to talk about the Navy's Military Sealift Command. This is the entity that crews 1/5 out of the Navy's vessels with merchant mariners. These two ships are chartered vessels that are added to that, and these are commercial tankers. And the Navy highlighted these two ships, or MSC, I should say, highlighted these two ships because the role they just played in an exercise known as RIMPAC 2022. Now, if you don't know about RIMPAC, you may actually. Have you ever seen the movie Battleship? That exercise that took place before the aliens landed and the John Paul Jones had to save the day along with the battleship Missouri. That was RIMPAC. But RIMPAC 2022 is a huge operation. It is the biggest naval exercise in the world. 37 Allied ships took place. This is the very famous photo op they always do at the end of the exercise. I did a video a few weeks ago about a Peruvian vessel that suffered a engine room fire, the Geese, two crew members severely wounded in that, but the ship had to be towed back into Pearl Harbor. It was taking part in RIMPAC. And this story over here on the drive gives you all the details about the operation, the scope and scale of it. It's just a tremendous operation. Vessels from all around the world are participating in it. But obviously, when these ships set sail, we even have some unmanned vessels taking part in this. But when these ships set sail, they have to be replenished at sea, underway replenishment. And the Navy tends to do that with vessels specifically geared to that. However, the replenishment vessels, the ones that come alongside the Navy vessels and fly across rigs that provide fuel and ammunition and food and toilet paper and everything else they need, those vessels need to be resupplied. And since the end of the Vietnam War, the trend has been that those vessels have been operated by the Navy's Military Sealift Command, largely civilians. It was accelerated in the 1990s until about 2010 when all auxiliaries are manned by civilians. And again, story dropping on Friday that's going to talk more about this and talk about the issues with it. But the issue here is that those replenishment vessels, the oilers, the supply and store ships and ammunition ships, need to be resupplied, and that's where the Maersk Perry and the SLNC Goodwill came in. This is a story from MSC they put on their webpage, and they talk about this. Tanker ships deliver fuel to MSC ships via CONSOL. CONSOL is a consolidation operation in support of RIMPAC. Underway in the waters off the coast of Hawaii, MSC chartered tanker ships MEMT, Maersk Perry, and SLNC Goodwill are providing at-sea deliveries to the MSC Combat Logistics Force ships that are supporting underway phase of the biannual maritime exercise. It goes down in here. Maersk Perry is delivering JP5, that's jet fuel, aviation fuel and diesel fuel, and Goodwill is delivering diesel fuel to the USNS Henry J. Kaiser and the Pecos. These are two MSC oilers, the dry cargo ammunition ship Washington Chambers, through a series of consolidation cargo operations. This is the problem I have with this story right here. And you knew I was going to have a problem with this, or else I wouldn't have mentioned it. I would always, kind of laud the fact that you have these commercial ships that are providing the fuel here. But MSC has to go a step further and say this. MSC reintroduced conducting tanker to oiler consols at sea in 2015 as a way to utilize a flexible platform that allows MSC to operate worldwide at a variety of missions. All right, I got to take a minute here and say something. First off, this was the way that operations were done since World War II. Commercial vessels, tankers, cargo ships would come out, meet Navy underway replenishment vessels, fill them up, and then the underway replenishment vessels refueled, replenished the Navy combatants. This was known as station and shuttle ships. The station ships were the ones that were with the task group. They were the ones that were stationed with the forward battle group, and they would run back to the shuttle ships, the ships coming out of port, commercial ships coming out of port, replenish, and then head back to the fleet. And these commercial ships would do all the running. They'd run to port, get all the fuel. They were typically bigger, larger, so they can provide more to several replenishment vessels at a time. Well, that report said MSC reintroduced this in 2015. That's because we stopped doing that. Because in the 1990s, after the end of the Cold War in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, the Navy realized, well, let's just get rid of these shuttle ships, and we'll just use the station ships. And we'll let the station ships run back and forth. And that worked fine, by the way, when you're fighting, for example, in Korea and you're running to Japan, or if you're fighting in Vietnam and you're running to the Philippines, or if you're fighting in the Persian Gulf and you run to Bahrain or Oman. That's great. You're a couple hundred miles. That's fantastic. If you're fighting China and you got to run across the Pacific, especially with the closure of Red Hill, the facility in Pearl Harbor, you're talking about running 5,000 miles. That's going to take your ships out of action. And when we talked earlier about Hawaii needing more tankers, this is the perfect reason right here. You need tankers not just to provide oil to Hawaii, but you need it for this defense mission. So we should be building new tankers. We're not building new tankers. We haven't built any new tankers in almost 10 years now. And that's a big problem. We need to be building new tankers. Plus, they have a defense mission. The program that's been created, the Tanker Security Program, provides $6 million for each ship. The problem is tankers don't work the same way as ships in the Maritime Security Program, container ships, roll-on, roll-off vessels. The tanker market it's peaks and troughs, man. It just goes up and down, up and down. It's crazy. And there are times you got to lay up your tankers. You're never going to use them. Well, that takes a tanker out of service for weeks at a time. You need a program that keeps those ships in at least a reduced operating status or operating with the military so that they have a job to do. We need to be talking with commercial firms, with the military. We need to right-size our military. We're running our underway replenishment vessels like the Pecos, like the Washington Chambers, like the Henry J. Kaiser that supported this operation, ragged. When you see images of those ships, they look terrible. That's because they're running and basically performing two jobs, that of the shuttle ship and the station ship, when in truth, they should be supplemented by commercial vessels. And understand, when you start building merchant ships, commercial vessels in the United States, number one, that lowers the cost of building new ships, not just for the commercial side, but the military side, increases our shipyards, increases the number of merchant mariners working, increases our Sealift capability. It all around the board increases everything. And yes, is there upfront cost? Yes, there is upfront cost. There's no doubt about it. Should it be borne by the Department of Defense? No, this is a government issue. It should be borne by everybody. But at the same time, we need to make laws and regulations that allow for private investment, because that's how you solve these problems. Other countries have solved these problems, but you need to be able to help and kind of direct funding to these problems. You can tell I'm not in my normal spot. I'm on the road. I think you may have gotten a hint of where I am on the road based on today's videos, but I will not disclose. You can postulate in the comment section where in the world you think Sal is this week. I'll be back next week at my usual locale in beautiful North Carolina. Got some more videos popping up here that were pre-recorded and some interviews I've done to keep videos coming up to you. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, share it across social media, and if you can, contribute to the page. Thanks for tuning in this week, and until next week, this is Sal saying aloha.